Hi, buddy. Hi. Hi, dear.
Oh, don't make him go away, Erin. He's
I
so
know, it's the best part of the meeting when babies come on.
goodness, sweetie. He doesn't like it. It's boring.
I told him I would give him an Oreo for dinner, and he doesn't want a banana. He wants an Oreo.
Wait, how old is he? Erin,
He
how
knows
old
that
is
word.
he? How old is he?
22 months.
He doesn't like it. It's boring.
I told him I would give him an Oreo for dinner, and he doesn't want a banana. He wants an Oreo.
Wait,
Jenny, we got some feedback happening there.
Yeah, I got it.
oh man, 22 months. Wow. That seems to have gone so fast.
Doesn't it?
And yet,
It's endless and it never ceases.
Chris's son is in a kindergarten already. It's like, holy cow, where'd that go?
That's funny.
Yeah.
My little 7-month-old grandson, he got a banana, ate the whole thing all the way through. Because he doesn't know about Oreos yet.
Yeah. Don't worry. Keep it that way. Apparently Oreos are better than bananas at dinner.
Is it okay if I turn my camera off for a little bit? I haven't had a chance to eat dinner and I don't want to do it in front of everyone.
Oh, absolutely. That's fine.
All right, but I'm here. I can hear.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Carol, we don't want you passing out of hunger.
A little
Okay, have all your brain cells
This
going.
meeting would last 45 minutes, giving us a 15-minute break before the other meeting for dinner, but that may not happen.
You never know. It's up to you guys.
Hi. Danny, what? Yeah, I'm just starting. I just had to start early.
And I do have screaming in the background, Lisa. I was joking that that was going to be happening during the 6 o'clock time. Don't know if you can hear it.
They probably want Oreos for dinner too, and I think that's perfectly acceptable. You can see why I'm the favorite aunt.
Yeah, health food isn't very
we're
popular.
compromising with wheat thins. It's very healthy.
I like these things too. So
So cute.
Isn't he adorable? Oh
Uh-huh.
my gosh.
Look at his cheeks.
Mhm.
okay, so who we have? Stephanie, we have Carol, we have Bart, we have Michael. We are good to go, Lisa. I lost my pen, however.
Michael, Lisa, you do
Michael.
your thing, and then Michael.
All right, then Michael goes. All right, can all commissioners see and hear? If so, give me a thumbs up. Carol, I know can. She talked about it earlier. All members of the public see and hear. I can't see the members of the public, so I'm going to assume you guys can. Good. This meeting is being recorded. Once Commissioner Covey asked me to call the roll, indicate you are here, as well as give permission to record by verbally stating here, permission to record. All yours, Michael.
I call the February 15th Finance Committee of the Whole meeting of the Glencoe Park District to order. Lisa Shepherd, please call roll and note the time.
Sure, it's 6 o'clock. A member Bourne,
Yes, permission
member
to record.
Brooks, member Brooks,
Yes,
Record.
permission to record.
member Schneider,
Here, permission to record.
member Spain,
Here, permission to record.
Chair Covey.
Permission to record.
Perfect. All right.
Okay. It is our practice not to address questions at this time. However, we will take comments under advisement. Is there anyone who would like to make a verbal comment? And if so, please limit comments to 3 minutes per person. I don't see any hands being raised, so I think we can move on. Perfect. Then Lisa and John, do we want to go through the first draft of the budget?
Yep, I'm gonna turn it right over to John. John, I just let you share the screen, so.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. So I will go ahead and share screen here so that we can kind of walk along the same document together here. Hopefully everybody has had a chance to review the first draft here of the fiscal 23 budget. You will have noticed that the budget format does look pretty similar to what we've presented in prior years, with a few exceptions that I'm going to get into detail on shortly here. So starting here with the Director of Finance memo and budget summary overview here in tab 1. So this document here is really just meant to provide detail on what is included in the 9 tabs here that we have in the budget document. And it also includes a section here for the budget premises, which gets into some detail as it relates to our operating tax levy. If you'll remember, back to November, we had adopted the 2021 tax levy, which applies to our fiscal year 22 and 23. That was approved at a 4.02% increase over the previous year. Of course, we won't know what that final extension is until we receive our final property tax levy, which is typically in the summer timeframe. Number 3 here, we just make mention of our district's policy to maintain a 50% reserve committed to fiscal sustainability, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And based on the ability to meet the fund balance policy requirements, we have proposed in the fiscal 23 budget that we make a $600,000 transfer from the corporate fund and an $850,000 transfer from the recreation fund to go to Fund 69, which is our master plan capital project fund. Number 5 here just gives an overview, very high overview on the capital project activity for fiscal year 23. So our operating capital Fund 65 is going to have approximately $604,000 budgeted in projects. B, C, and D represent fund level capital outlay. So the capital expenditures that are specific enough to a department or fund that are being spent, that they are just spent directly out of that fund. And of course, the master plan capital, which is the significant capital that we'll be undertaking for fiscal 23. And that's mainly the Watts renovation, the pier project, and the crib wall. Number 6, again, just discusses the 5% merit pool that was approved by the board at the January board meeting. As we look at the budget summary section here, just a few things I'd like to highlight. So this is where we do have some additional information when compared to the prior year budget, and that's schedules 1 through 4 that are summarized here. So in the past with the budget summary, we've taken the approach of trying to incorporate the beginning fund balance in with our revenues. And then down at the bottom, we'll go ahead and subtract out those revenues, and we'll also make adjustments for capital project transfers. And when we get to the expenditure section, we also make adjustments for general and administrative allocations that are booked between different departments. So what we did this year is we did present that same information, which is in tables 1 through 4, items 5 through 8 here on the screen as you're looking at it. So for those of you, I know we have some commissioners who have been through this process before. So for those of you who are comfortable with that and familiar with those schedules, we did leave those in there. And we also did add schedules 1 through 4 this year, really just to provide a different perspective. And really it comes into play here with Schedule 1, and what Schedule 1 is really doing is factoring out all of the carryover balances, beginning fund balance, capital project transfers, and G&A allocations. And it really just tries to summarize or provide a snapshot as to what the operating activity looks like for the fiscal 21 or the fiscal 21-22 budget, which is Schedule 2, the fiscal 21-22 projections, which is Schedule 3, and then finally for the fiscal 22-23 budget, which is going to be Schedule 4. So Schedule 2 is going to summarize our ending fund balance at $2,743,447 for the corporate fund and at $4,469,924 for the recreation fund. And that's as of February 28, 2022. And then Schedule 4, which is the fiscal 23 budget, we see our ending fund balance at $2,150,629 for the corporate fund and at $3,752,239 for the recreation fund. Again, just a high level summary of the capital projects. We'll get into a little more detail on these in tab 5. So with that, I'm going to shift over here to our budget summaries. And as I mentioned here, so Schedule 1, I'm going to spend a little time here on this schedule, just trying to explain some of the numbers. And this is the schedule where we're taking out beginning fund balance, we're taking out capital transfers, we're taking out G&A allocation, and we're really just trying to display what the changes were, what we had budgeted in one year, what we're projecting it to be, and what we're budgeting for the next year. So this is broken out by revenue, these 3 columns. These are expenditures, these columns. And then this is the excess revenue over expenditures or deficiency revenue over expenditures. And I don't mean to be long-winded when I say excess revenue over expenditures repeatedly as I'm talking through this information, but I just want to make clear that this number is not necessarily a surplus or a deficit, because it really doesn't factor in those other things that are not being included, like the capital project transfers. The proper term in GAAP accounting is excess revenue over expenditures or deficiency of revenue over expenditures. So that's what I'll refer to as I'm walking through the information here tonight. So I will just point out here, again, we have fiscal 22 budgeted in the first column of each section, fiscal 22 projected in the second column of each section. And then this is fiscal 23 budget in the third column of each section. So again, just a reminder, our fiscal year from March 1 to 21 to February 28th.
Others or just for me?
I'm sorry, Commissioner?
Was he going in and out for others, or is it just for me?
Yeah, everyone.
Okay, Don, you were going in and out for about 30 seconds. If you want to back up and say just to remind us and then continue.
Sure. Sorry about that. So as I was mentioning here, the different sections here, this section here, these first 3 columns is the revenue. The next 3 columns here are the expenditures, and the third set of columns here is the excess of revenue over expenditures. Did you guys get the rationale between calling it a surplus or an excess? Okay, so I won't get back into that. And then first column of each section represents our revenue for fiscal 22. Second column represents our projected revenue for fiscal 22, so our forecast at year end. And the third column of each section represents our budgeted revenue for our budgeted amounts for fiscal 23. And just a quick recap on our fiscal year, it's March 1 to February 28. So fiscal 22 amounts represent activity from March 1, 21 to February 28th, 22. So just to get into some of the numbers here, we'll start with the corporate fund. And as we see here, we had budgeted in the corporate fund for a $394,000 excess of revenue over expenditures in the corporate fund for fiscal 22. As we project out what that number is going to be, we're looking at that being around $833,000. So significantly higher than what we had initially budgeted for in the corporate fund. A major part of that is as we look at the beach, we had budgeted for a deficiency in revenue over expenditures by about $11,000. And that number wound up being approximately $211,000. So we're looking at a major difference there. And then not as large of a difference here for the boathouse. We had budgeted for a $77,000 deficiency in revenue over expenditures. And that number wound up being approximately $23,000 less at $54,000. Similar for Watts, we had budgeted a deficit of approximately $171,000, and we wound up with a deficiency of revenue over expenditures of about $56,000. So those were the main contributing factors. We do see that parks also, we had budgeted for a deficiency of $1,567,000. That number is looking like it'll be around $1,473,000. So really all the departments within the corporate fund, those being administration, parks, Watts, beach and boathouse, outperformed what we had initially budgeted. As we take a look at the difference here in parks, we did achieve, there was some increase in expenses specifically related to Duke Park and the water bill associated with that, but that was offset with some reduced spending in maintenance and contractual. So we had budgeted for $1,567,000 and spent right around $1,500,000. As we look at Watts Beach and Boathouse, it's really the reason for the better than budgeted results is really in the revenue. So we look at the beach and we had even Watts. So as we look at Watts, we had budgeted for $170,000 here in fiscal 22, and we wound up with $281,000 in projected revenue. The beach, we had budgeted $308,000 compared to $551,000 that we're projecting out, and boat to a smaller extent budgeted approximately $113,000, and we're winding up around $126,000. Looking at expenses, they are relatively close to what was budgeted for those particular departments. So again, it really is the revenue that helped to contribute to the better than budgeted results. And as we look at it, you know, we were budgeting during the midst of the pandemic last year and probably at the height of the Delta variant. And really our revenue model changed as a result of the pandemic for Watts and the beach, and particularly how we shifted over to more of a pass model. And that certainly had a positive impact in the operating results then for our fiscal 22. Next number I'll point your attention to is here in the recreation fund. So we had budgeted for a deficiency of revenue over expenditures in the amount of $96,000. That number wound up being in excess of slightly over $1 million. So a huge difference there. And I'll speak to some of the reasons for that difference here. So the TAKIF admin department, we did not budget. If we look at the revenues, we had budgeted $1,316,000. We wound up a little higher than that. And that was mainly related to room rentals that were not budgeted for. Obviously, during the pandemic, we didn't want to budget for something that we were still unsure on at that point. Expenditures did wind up slightly lower than the budgeted amount of $2,362,000. They wound up around $2,228,000. As we looked into the reason for that, it was mainly in salaries, particularly in custodial salaries that for some positions that we're looking to fill, along with reduced spending as it relates to supplies. When we take a look at our rec program, that's really one of the big ones that's contributing to that significant excess of revenue over expenditures here. So we had budgeted for $867,000 and we wound up with $1,372,000. As I looked into the individual programs themselves, if we look at the sports programs and as we look at the camps, that was about $300,000 of this overall increase. And then about $100,000 of that overall increase was related to additional margin achieved from our preschool programs, particularly enrichment. So Children's Circle not included in this line item. So Another department within the recreation fund that really outperformed what we had budgeted is Children's Circle. So we're projecting a slightly over $500,000 excess of revenue over expenditures in Children's Circle for fiscal 22, compared to a budgeted amount of $102,000. So really as we look at that number, the $523,000 does include $150,000 in grant revenue that we received in fiscal 22, which is not budgeted for. And really the remainder there is, I think we were conservative in our revenue budgets, just given where we were at in the midst of the pandemic, and again, the Delta variant. And we really had less closures as a result of COVID that we would have anticipated in the Children's Circle. So really just came out of it better than we were initially thinking during the COVID Delta variant a little over a year ago. For the fitness center, we did budget for a deficiency of revenue over expenditures right around $20,000. That has come in nicely this year, rebounded, and looking to probably or hopefully break even as we end our fiscal year 22 within the next couple weeks here. So just want to shift my attention then over to the fiscal 23 budgeted amounts here as it relates to both the projected and budgeted amounts for fiscal 22. So the Parks Department is budgeting slightly under 1.7 million in expenditures. And really the main reason for the increase here is the direct allocation of health insurance. So with this year's budget, we're directly allocating health insurance expense to the particular department that we can assign the employee to. Whereas in the past, it's been paid out of the general and administrative department and then allocated out based off of a percentage. So this is maybe a little more precise, as we're directly identifying the people on the health insurance and charging it directly to that department. So that actually accounted for $230,000 in additional expense for the Parks Department. They did obviously achieve a savings in their G&A, since that G&A number went down as we pulled the health insurance out. That savings was around $90,000, which gets us to a net increase of around $140,000. And then the remainder of that increase here compared to budget is really related to Duke Park, as I had mentioned. We're kind of increasing the utility bill for water there in Duke Park. Expenses for the other departments within the corporate fund, Watts Beach and Boathouse, are fairly consistent with prior year. Again, it's more on the revenue side of things, and we're not quite budgeting our revenue in Watts Beach or Boathouse really directly in line with prior year. And that's for a few reasons. We do take a historical approach as we're looking at the revenues and really try to take a 3-year analysis as opposed to just going back to the previous fiscal year. And that's probably a prudent approach, just given the anomalies that we likely did see as a result of COVID, particularly with Watts and the beach. Nonetheless, we are still budgeting for an overall excess of revenue over expenditures in the beach of a little over $100,000. And we're more optimistic on what our deficiency in revenue over expenditures will be, as that number is at about $92,000 compared to the budgeted $171,000 in the prior year. And again, Boathouse to a lesser extent, to approximately $13,000 less than the budgeted deficiency of revenue over expenditures last year. We do see an increase now as we shift to the recreation fund. Revenues for the TAKEF admin department, 90% of this is property taxes, so not a big swing there. I think increased a little bit for room rentals, but pretty consistent with prior year revenue. We do see a larger jump in expenditures here. We're budgeting for $2,555,000 in expenditures compared to the $228 in projected that we have for fiscal 22. And a couple things related to that. Again, similar to parks, we're directly allocating the health insurance for the folks that are paid out of the admin TAKEF fund. We're also having some increases in salaries as a result of reallocating the early child care manager from the Children's Circle into the TAKEF admin department. And we're also budgeting for an assistant department head within the Parks Department, and a portion of that person's salary will be allocated here to the TAKEF admin department also. So those are the main contributing factors to the increase in expenditures there. As we look at the recreation program, again, recreation programs had a significant increase in expenditures, but really in line with what we see here for increases in expenses. So we had budgeted 2.702 in fiscal 22, budgeting 3,668,000. So certainly optimistic that COVID will continue to have a limited effect on our programming. And then ultimately the margins that we're budgeting, 1,209,000 is really consistent with what we've seen in the recreation programs historically, slightly over 30% from a recreation program perspective. Children's Circle, again, we're budgeting for factoring out the grant revenue. So if we subtract the $150,000 in grant revenue from this $2,034,000, we have a slight increase in budgeted revenue for Children's Circle, while we do see a significant increase in expenditures for Children's Circle. So we're going from 1,511,000 here to 1,789,000. The main contributing factors there are the outsourced food service and part-time teachers. We are budgeting to hopefully be fully staffed. That's certainly an optimistic approach at this point, just given the difficult labor market. Nonetheless, we are budgeting to be fully staffed there. And I think, it's obviously, I think it would be a good thing if we are able to reach that budget or have our projected totals match up with this projected expenditures at the end of the year. And again, with the fitness center, we're optimistic that we'll continue to hover near or slightly below break even for the fitness center. Just to wrap up on Schedule 1, and then I could definitely take some questions if you have some now. The liability insurance fund here. So this is a non-major special revenue fund. And that's really true for all of these funds down here, with the exception of the bond and interest fund, which is a debt service fund, a major fund to the district. The other funds listed here are what are referred to as non-major special revenue funds. And really all that means is these funds receive property tax dollars that are set aside for a specific purpose. So they're restricted to be spent only on that purpose. Really, as you look at these numbers, not much to speak to outside of here, the liability insurance fund. We had budgeted to spend down some of our fund balance in this fund to the tune of $108,000. We only wound up around $20,000. And that's due to the fact that we had a lighting upgrade project here at TAKEF that was delayed and will ultimately see spent out in fiscal 23, which is reflected here in this $260,000 expenditure budget for fiscal 23. So that covers it for Schedule 1. I'll just kind of wrap up these next three schedules just to kind of summarize here. So the next three schedules represent the fiscal 22 budget, fiscal 22 projections, and the fiscal 23 budget. And what we do with these schedules is we do bring in those other components. So interfund transfers, our transfers, which represent our transfers to master plan capital and operating capital. Those are now included in the schedule. And then we show what our beginning fund balance is and how that projected net change in fund balance changes it, and ultimately what our ending fund balance percentage is. So as we look at this Schedule 2 here, again, this is for the fiscal 22 budget. We had budgeted for approximately 69% remaining fund balance in the corporate fund last year. And we had budgeted pretty close to that 68% for the recreation fund in the prior year. Where those projections ultimately are gonna shake out as we're projecting now, we're projecting to be at about 86% in the corporate fund, and we're projecting to be at about 87% in the recreation fund. So these numbers are what we're anticipating our fund balance to be at 2/28/22, so within the next couple weeks. It does not factor in the transfers that we had discussed in the previous committee meeting, proposing $1,450,000 in transfers.
Yep.
So when we do factor in those transfers, which will be made in our fiscal year 23, they're actually reflected here in this column. You see the 1,450,000. So this is where we're accounting for those transfers, the 850 here for the rec fund. And then the 600 is included here along with the 507 to operating capital. When we do factor in those capital transfers, we're projecting for a fiscal year 23, so February 28, 2023, ending fund balance in the corporate fund of approximately 67%. And we're projecting for approximately 61% in the recreation fund. So those are the numbers that we had discussed at the committee meeting at the beginning of February.
And John, just to make sure that I'm following you 100%, the last column is basically the ending fund balance. It's the second to last column divided by the second to first column, right? So that 60
That is correct. Yes.
is 3.7 million divided by 6.18 million.
That is correct. Yes.
John, Bart Schneider, just refresh my memory. When does the $1.4 million combined transfer take place?
We're anticipating that transfer to take place in June of 2022, once the audit numbers are finalized. We're not expecting any significant changes or audit adjustments, but we're going to hold back until we do have our final audited numbers to go ahead and make that transfer.
Okay, all right, thanks for reminding me.
So I have a question with that. I thought we had, if my memory serves me right, we had talked about doing it in the current fiscal year. So does it show up as current in the audit?
Yeah, so in the audit, it'll show up as a committed fund balance. So, set aside for that specific purpose. I believe we're bringing it to the board in March for approval, and we'll ultimately then transfer it in June. So it will remain, approval will take place in March, and it'll be transferred then that same year.
Okay, so then that would show up. Yeah. Okay, so then that it would be a line item as a transfer in the fiscal 2023 audit and budget. Okay.
Correct. Commissioner Covey, just to go back to your question too. So the percentages, it really, you can take it off of whether you allocate G&A or not.
Right.
So these percentages, I believe, are actually based off of the allocated G&A. But if you really took the bottom line here, it really doesn't matter because you see it's the same number. The G&A allocation just nets itself off. So
Right.
the number here is 63% regardless of how you look at it. It's just the split then between the corporate or recreation fund.
Schedule, sorry, wrong schedule. It zeroes itself out in the top in the corporate fund. Where does it zero itself out in the recreation fund?
So it actually does. So you actually wind up with a deficit here in the corporate fund of 674,000, or a revenue. As you look at it from an accounting perspective, this would be a credit of 674,000, which is a revenue. And this is a debit of 674. So it essentially nets itself off.
I'm just going to believe you on that one.
So here we see, this is the total G&A expenses, the 1,105,000.
Right, and then there's no offsetting. There's only the offsetting part of it is only half of it, right? 641 is half of that.
674. Yeah, so 641 is what goes to the recreation admin take-it fund, and then 33,000 goes into the recreation fund for Children's Circle. But essentially the total G&A expenses are the 1,105,296. Immediately we take it out of that department because it nets itself off. It gets reimbursed from the other funds. And then we just take that 1,105,000 and split it up across the other departments within the corporate fund, which is Parks, Watts, Beach, and Boathouse. And then the two departments in the rec fund get their share. So it nets itself then out to zero. All we're doing here is moving the expense from a department within the general fund to 6 other departments, 4 of
Right.
which are in the corporate fund and 2 are within the recreation fund.
Oh, I see what you're doing. Okay, so it's the 1.1, I knew what you were doing, I just didn't realize it. The 1.105 is a sum of the 309 for parks and the 44 and the 50, the 27 and the 641.
And the 33, that is correct, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and this was a point where I was, as I
Okay.
was initially reviewing the GNA, I figured this might be a little more clear in how it, it starts in one department and all it really does is get allocated to other departments. It receives revenue in that department, in that general and administrative department, and then for GAAP purposes, we'll go ahead and eliminate that as part of our audit balances. Because it's not.
How come the Rex program gets none of it?
So the rec programs are really meant to, operate standalone. Get a lot of contractual work being done, and so I believe that's probably the intent there, is that we would not allocate any G&A there because we're essentially contracting out and earning a portion of that revenue as we're providing those services to our
Hey, folks, I mean,
citizens.
we don't have to change it, but just like the Stephanie Briskmans of the world and Bobby Collins, who are taking their G&A, salaries are certainly dedicated to some of the recreation programs out there, right? They're certainly spending time with the contractors and the vendors, and there's an argument either way, but I hear you. I wouldn't change it, but just I don't think that's the right answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could take a closer look at it as we get into the next fiscal year. And I certainly analyzed it for really just looking at direct cost and determining if those percentages made sense based on overall direct cost, which they did. So those G&A allocation amounts are consistent with what we've done in prior years.
Got it.
So with that, if there's no more questions on these schedules, I'll just move ahead here to those tables. So hopefully this looks familiar to at least 3 of our commissioners here on the call. And again, I'm not going to get into the detail on each of these schedules because I recap most of this in schedules 1 through 4. Commissioner Covey, just in relation to your last question, we do have a schedule in here showing what the G&A allocation percentages are. Again, directly allocating the health insurance resulted in a decrease here of G&As to 1,105,000 compared to the 1.366 that we're projecting for fiscal 22. Table 4 here, I think, is useful though to get into the different components here of fund balance. So if you remember, I mentioned the 67 and 61% there in Schedule 4 previously. These are the components that really make that up. So our committed for fiscal sustainability amount here is 1,615,000 for the corporate fund, and it's 3,092,000 for the recreation fund. One new thing this year that you might notice also is we've added an assigned amount here for medical insurance reserve, and that number is highlighted here. We got $75,000 at 228.23 within the corporate fund, and we have $100,000 at 228.23 in the recreation fund. And I'm going to move on to tab 3 here to help explain kind of what our thought process is with that assigned for medical insurance reserve. So tab 3 gets into the narrative review and kind of background on all the departments and funds. I'm not going to get into the detail of all of this unless there's any questions. I'd obviously be happy to address those. But really what I'd like to focus on here is the health insurance discussion here in the narrative. And ultimately what our hope is with this health insurance reserve that we're establishing for fiscal 22 and into fiscal 23 is we're looking to just have additional options as it relates to health insurance. So health insurance is one of the biggest line items in our operating expenditure budget. And if we're able to maybe set aside some money and just have it assigned for that specific purpose, I think it'll serve a couple purposes here. It'll take some of that variable component out of our operating budget. We won't have to be budgeting to the extreme every year and then ultimately realizing, hey, we didn't have to use it all. And secondly, it'll give us, I think, flexibility in the overall health insurance options that we choose to offer and that we choose to ultimately pay for. So what I mean by that is if we were to move our HRA plan from a $1,000 $1,250 deductible to a $3,000 $3,250 deductible plan, first off, that has no impact on the employee because the employee only pays the difference there. So in both cases, the employee pays $250. The main difference is there the district would be on the hook for additional expenses, a higher premium if we had more utilization, so there was more claims, the district would have to pay those out of pocket. Given our historically low utilization rate within our HRA, I think there's a real opportunity to potentially save some money there in going into that higher plan and just, especially if we have that reserve set aside. And as we're achieving savings then in our health insurance on a year-to-year basis, we can certainly quantify that and put that back into this employee insurance reserve and then really take a look at it and see what can be done to help improve the overall employee benefit package that we're able to offer to our employees. So that's the reason for the additional employee insurance reserve for fiscal 23. And I'll just kind of illustrate what the health insurance expenditures look like once we get to Appendix D.
Can you just explain then where that money is coming from? So the actual balance of this year is 10,000.
Correct.
The deducted balance was 50. So we're 40,000 short.
Not necessarily. So the $10,000 is really a carryover from several years back. And I think was meant to handle any potential claims on a much lower plan. So as I get back here to table 4. So that's what the $10,000 represents. So what we're looking to do is to put aside this year an initial amount in each fund to allow us to increase our exposure to claims, but ultimately save on premiums at the end of the day. So as we ran some rough numbers, we're optimistic we could potentially save $50,000 if we change from this $1,000 $1,250 HRA to the $3,000 $3,250 HRA. We are optimistic that we could potentially achieve some savings there, estimated again at around $50,000, which we would in turn then put back into the insurance reserve as we continue to evaluate then what our employee benefit package looks like. So it's basically a component of existing fund balance that we're setting aside.
Is this
Okay.
effectively a savings from having higher deductibles that you're helping that people pay through this reserve?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, Commissioner.
Sorry, it's like I'm a little confused as well. So if I'm the only one, we can just talk about it later. But is this basically you're saving by shifting the deductibles? You're saving money somewhere else, and then you're keeping this.
Our monthly premiums are significantly less for a plan with a $3,000 $3,250 deductible,
Right.
as opposed to the plan that's $1,000 $1,250. So if we shift to that plan, we definitely save the premiums. And then the variable component is the utilization rate. So if we do pay out claims, we could potentially be on the hook, which we would use this reserve to pay. Historically, our claims have been low, and the expectation is they'll be low enough to where we'll achieve significant savings that we can continue to invest into the insurance reserve.
And for the actual employee who's on the medical plan,
Yes.
he or she is not paying the higher deductible, or
No impact at all. They still pay a $250 deductible. The only difference is the bill that we receive in the mail is instead of $1,000, it's $3,000, or
Right.
it goes up for.
You're hedging your bet. We're gonna have lower bills. The savings that we get from shifting the deductible will more than offset the anticipated bills that you will get with the higher differential. and the,
Right.
the employee feels nothing, I'm fine with it.
Yep.
Other firms do this differently, where they actually have where they have the employee pay the extra, and then, John, you would cut a check to the employee, but it sounds like this is.
It's all behind the scenes, correct? Yeah, the employee sees nothing of it, so.
Yep, I get it, makes sense.
I get it now. Thank
I
you.
get it.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. So moving on to tab 4 here, this is the detail budget. So you'll literally see every line item within our budget here. Certainly not going to get into the detail here. The only thing I will point out, if you are looking at some accounts in particular, the year-to-date activity column here, this is still cash basis. So you might see some anomalies where our projections are lower than year-to-date. And that is, we are aware of that, and that's just a matter of these being cash basis numbers. Our projected numbers are accrual basis. So once we close our books at the end of our fiscal year, we certainly would expect that those balances will then align with each other. I'm gonna move on to tab 5 here, which is our capital project information. Appendix A, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but this is a summary of the smaller capital items that are directly identifiable with a particular department or fund. So they are charged directly to that fund. So we got admin, parks, Watts Beach, Boathouse, the rec fund, children's circle, and really at the end of the day, pretty consistent with what was requested in the prior year, 634,000 for fiscal 22 compared to 597,000 in fiscal 23. Appendix B, so this is our operating capital, our Fund 65. We did have a discussion on this at our previous committee meeting. And some of the information is going to change here slightly as a result of that discussion. So the first thing I'll point your attention to is the $203,000 that we've set aside here for the AC condenser. That will be increased now for the enhanced filtration that was discussed at the previous committee meeting. And we are also going to increase the community hall AV system budgeted amount here slightly from 60 to likely around 75,000. Unfortunately, we do have to cut something out from here then, and it likely we would propose it to be the R22 bulk purchase, just maybe scaling back on that to account for the changes for the filtration in the AV system. We'll also point out that we are going to start increasing or proposing that we are increasing the amount that's allocated over to Fund 65. This is strictly coming from the corporate fund, that corporate administrative fund. So it's been $500,000 for several years, at least back since like FY15, I want to say, without any adjustment for inflation or anything to that effect. So what we're planning on doing is increasing it in line with the increase in our levy. So again, the levy's a year behind. So this $507,000 transfer for fiscal 23 represents a 1.4% increase, which is consistent with what CPI was at 12/31/20. Appendix B, next page here. So these are our big ticket master plan capital items. Again, I think we've discussed most of these. The big items this year are the kiln or the Watts construction, the crib wall, the pier, and of course the kiln, the gas kiln that we're installing here. Tab 6 gets us into the budget summary by categories. So these are all the funds just in the type of category for either revenue or expenditure. Not going to get into the detail of each of these either. We'll again just point out insurance. We are directly allocating to the corporate, to the parks fund and to the recreation take-if fund. And as a result, we do see a reduction in where the G&A is presented here in our total fixed charges and obligations. Tab 7 gets into the merit pool document. You all have seen this, I believe, so I will not spend a lot of time on that document either. We do have a detail of our training schedule and tuition reimbursement for the upcoming fiscal year as well. Tab 8 gets into 5-year budget projections, and I'll just be careful to say here that this is definitely not a multi-year fiscal plan. That would be a little more involved. But nonetheless, we did go through the exercise of looking at our revenues in particular here. And really just, for our property taxes, we know that with inflation, we're likely to see an increase in the range of 5% next year for property taxes, maybe more depending on what our new property looks like. Some basic assumptions here to our fees and charges and our rec program revenue. And then same goes for expenses, some basic assumptions there just based on inflation and everything. And really the most useful point in here for me at least is I took a look at, you know, where we're projecting to be at the end of each of the next 5 fiscal years. So this isn't as eye-popping or alarming of a number, because we do know that this is all accounted for, and a big part of this is watts. But when we look at upcoming fiscal years, and particularly fiscal 25 and 26, this line item here represents the capital that's tied to our condition assessments or our heat sheets. And so we're anticipating that we will have these capital needs, and particularly for fiscal 25 and 26, there's really not any funding yet put aside to meet those capital needs for those particular fiscal years. I will point out that fiscal 27 is the first year that our referendum bond debt would fall off, and we would ultimately be able to assess whether that's another avenue that we would want to go down at that point. Tab 9 just gets into the detail of the program and facility fees for our major programs. So won't get into too much detail here unless there are any specific questions. And with that, if there's anything I know there's a lot of information here. So if there's anything I went over too quickly or skipped over, I'd be happy to revisit or answer any questions that you might have at this point.
A quick question, John. Just referring back to the last page of tab 5, I do see that we are budgeting for the entire cost of the crib wall. I know that there is an expectation that the village is going to contribute to that. How does that play out, and when do we find out? When do we learn that?
Well,
Yeah, so
actually-
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, actually, I believe the crib wall is what, 400,000 it says there?
Yes.
Actually, the full amount of the crib wall would be 700 and something thousand as of right now. So we
Mhm.
are in talks with the village about partnering with that. And that really is, both of the parties have budgeted money. It will not probably be completed in this fiscal year, it'll be next fiscal year, but it's earmarked just in case we were able to facilitate that. Right now, we're trying to see if the village is trying to see if we can get a grant associated with the water plant, so that was something that they could only get a grant for. But we are looking at a partnership, and that it only indicates half the amount of that crib wall.
Okay, thank you.
It's a lot of money for a wall, I know.
Yeah, and it's especially since it's twice that. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, hey, John, on tab 8, and I understand we're talking about a one-year budget, not a long-term budget. But in terms of the shortfalls, and you pointed out the big capital expenditure numbers, in the assumptions in there, a page or two back, number 3, it just says no other grant revenues have been included in these projections. Is it likely that there would be grant revenues for any of these big capital expenditure numbers, or that's, yeah, I don't know if there's any preliminary feel for that.
Well, I can answer that again. As of right now, we're looking, forecasting that the only one that would be eligible possibly for an OSLIC grant would be Lakefront Park, and that's if we added other recreation amenities to it. Other than that, a lot of the projects we have on our list aren't really attractive for the big OSLIC grants or the park grants like we've had in the past. So these are more infrastructure improvements. I don't know if Chris wants to weigh in on that.
Yeah, Bart. So the park grants in particular, really, there's actually a score modifier if you've ever won one. So it's not likely the district will win one of those again in the near future. As far as the final year out, I think is the 5.5 million year, represents the maintenance center. I think outside of a state of Illinois line item grant that would have to be kind of negotiated at a political level, I don't see a competitive grant process typically paying for a maintenance center. It's just not something that lawmakers typically can get reelected supporting. So it's not something that they usually pay for, unfortunately. Our best bet is for a federal grant for the crib wall. As far as water infrastructure, that's actually a very a possibility. So I think that what Lisa indicated earlier, that focus with the village is our best bet for something outside of the Illinois Department of Natural Resource now.
Okay, and is it the whole 5.5 million that would be for the maintenance center? Or is that just a big part of it?
I would imagine it's probably going to be more than that by 26, 27, if I had to guess. I mean, it's
Okay.
probably a $5 to $5.5 million build right now today, based on the very conservative concept plan that we did 3 years ago. So
Yeah, and that's not with a lot of bells and whistles. That's a very streamlined design. It's every bit of that, so.
And it sounds like it's something we wish we had now as a new maintenance center. But is there a date? Can it be phased in over time, or it's like tear it down, rebuild it? What exactly goes on?
You know, Bart, a lot of the expense is unfortunately site modifications as far as retention goes. So if you start down like a phase, long and the short of it, the concept plan we looked at was one centralized building, as opposed to all the small satellite buildings from an efficiency standpoint. So, you know, from a phasing, I think that they're likely, if we're really looking at, you know, potential 28, 29, 30 plan, I think there is going to have to be some thought on how do we carry the existing facilities. I don't think that they're going to make it in the condition they're in another 10, 15 years. I mean, in a perfect world, we were to replace the maintenance center in 1990. So that's the reality of it. I mean, these buildings are from the 20s.
Okay, all right, thanks very much. That's really helpful.
You mentioned as well, do we have debt service from one of the bonds rolling off, right, when it's maturing? So we
Yes.
have the opportunity to layer in additional debt without having a levy impact, provided it was be similar amortization.
Referendum debt, correct.
Yeah.
Our debt service base is accounted for based on the 2020 issuance done last year, or 2 fiscal years ago.
Given that this project is more of a, I guess, a need base versus a fun, flashy project, does that typically affect referendum results? Do voters like something that's necessary more than fun, or?
Voters like the beach, and voters like Watts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we would do is, to be honest with you, they don't like it. That's not what I call sexy project.
Yeah.
But the village has passed road and sewers here before increases. So we would layer it with, we also have beach improvements on our heat sheet, pickleball courts, things like that would try to make it a little more attractive to our voters. It would be a hard sell, I'm not gonna lie, but I think we're gonna have to do something. So trying that referendum debt is pretty much a reality and by that point.
Mhm.
I don't think we can wait till our other bonds roll off for without non-referendum dollars, so.
John, I have a quick question at the beginning of tab 6. And I'm hoping it's a 1 or 2 sentence answer, just conceptual. How do the property taxes get allocated to each of the funds?
Yeah,
It's not a straight percentage.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Bart. It's not a straight set percentage here. So of the funds listed here, these are all uncapped funds with the exception of the special recreation, or I'm sorry, they are all capped funds with the exception of special recreation and bond and interest. So for the capped funds, I should say, we're essentially coming up with those allocations based off of need. And we'll take a look at some of these non-major special revenue funds and really monitor the fund balance and ensure that we're not carrying too much in there, but still staying within the parameters of our fund balance policy, which is 25% for those non-major funds. An example of when we would maybe shift some of the allocation came into play with COVID, when we had ultimately determined we're likely going to see a dip in our program revenues. And so we went ahead and bumped up the levy that's allocated to the recreation fund. But really it's based off of the levy that's prepared in the fall, and again, taking a look at ending fund balances and future needs in the upcoming years is really how that's allocated for those capped funds.
Okay, great. Hey, thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right. We plan to advance this for approval at the March board meeting. Hearing no questions or changes. Does that sound good? All right. We have no need, I have no other business. And we have no need to go into closed session, so we can adjourn this meeting and go right into the board meeting if you'd like. First, I'd like to say kudos to John. It was his very first budget, and to Bobby, Chris, and all the teams that worked very hard on this budget. It's a very long, painstaking process to go through with a lot of debate and back and forth discussion. So they all knocked it out of the park. So thank you very much to my amazing team. Round of applause.
Nice job. So then I can ask, does the committee have any questions prior to advancing the budget for approval at the March meeting? Sounds like a no.
No,
Does not sound like there's any other business.
Nope.
I'm not going to close session, so I enter a motion to adjourn.
so moved. Someone
We have a
has to second.
second. Second, Spain.
Second,
Roll call vote, please.
Member Bourne,
Yes.
Member Brooks,
Yes.
Member Schneider,
yes.
Member Spain,
Yes.
Chair Kobe.
Yes, motion passes. Lisa, please record the time for Zoom.
6:58. All right.
Please stop the recorder.
Stop the quarter, switch it.
I don't know how you do this each time, Lisa Brooks. I always get nervous.
Recorder's ready to go.
We did indicate on our board that our next meeting would start meeting at immediately after the finance committee of the whole. So Lisa, you could start anytime.
Yes, if everyone's okay with that, doesn't need a quick 1.5 minute break. We'll just move on. Lisa, could you ask about seeing and hearing and all that?
I can. Can everybody, can all the board members see and hear? If so, give me a thumbs up. All right, can all the members of the public see and hear and give me a thumbs up? Perfect. Thank you so much. You're good to go, Lisa.
Okay, I call
Oh.
the February.
I'm sorry, I didn't say this. This meeting is
No.
being recorded. Once President Brooks asked me to call the roll, indicate you are here as well as give permission to record by verbally stating here permission to record.
Thank you, Lisa. I call the February 15th, 2022 regular board meeting of Glencoe Park District to order. Lisa, please call the roll and note the time.
Right, it's 6:59. Commissioner Bourne,
Yes, permission to record.
Commissioner Kobe,
Record here.
Commissioner Schneider,
Here, permission to record.
Commissioner Spain,
Your permission to record.
President Brooks.
Here, permission to record. Moving to consent agenda, items A through D are routine. Does any commissioner want any item pulled from consent agenda items? Okay, no, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
So moved.
Warren,
Second,
Schneider,
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bourne,
Yes.
Commissioner Kobe, Commissioner Schneider,
yes.
Sorry, yes.
thank you, Commissioner Spain,
Yes.
President Brooks.
Yes, motion passes. Moving on to matters from the public, it is our practice not to address questions at this time. However, we will take comments under advisement. Is there anyone who would like to make a verbal comment? If so, please limit comments to 3 minutes per person. And let's see here. I'm not seeing anything. So we will then move to the financial report. 11 months of the fiscal year is complete. Believe it or not, John, you're back on to provide a synopsis of the report.
All right, thank you, President Brooks. So I'll keep this kind of short and sweet as we did just go over a lot of the projections. But as we PDF page 35 of 59, we'll just do a quick rundown here as to the financial activity for the month of January. So as we look at the rec department, about 133,000, 134,000 came in during the month. This is net of any refunds that were issued as a result of COVID shutdowns. And again, a good portion of the revenues taken in this month were actually camp related. So these are cash basis numbers. So those will ultimately be deferred as we close our books for our fiscal year. Not much to speak to from an expense standpoint on the rec department. Children's Circle revenue continues to be strong. 149,000 coming in the current fiscal year. Again, not too much to speak to from an expenditure standpoint. Fitness department, we're actually showing a profit right now, so that's good. So right around break even there, as we had discussed. With beach and boating, we just have the expenditures trickling in there for the general and administration allocation. So primarily salaries are a result of the $13,000 and $9,000 expenditure that we see for beach and boating respectively. Watts, so we are still showing excess of revenue over expenditures here of approximately $25,000. So we'll just really need to see how that shakes out for the month of February here. Obviously, a lot of contingencies there for weather, and certainly might have some disruption this week based on the current forecast. G&A department, that number is actually a little lower this month, and the reason being that little under 70,000. Reason that's a little lower for this month is we did not get a health insurance expense in there for this month. That's just based off of timing on when the invoice was paid. It'll certainly catch itself up. Parks department, not a lot to speak to, just salary and G&A allocation, mainly making that up. And then the rec admin or take-if fund, we had about 177,000 of expenses. We had a pretty large expense hit for credit card processing fees related to the most recent round of registration. So, obviously a high volume there, which is while we don't want to pay the fees, it's a good indicator there on registration. And then as we look at that bottom line number, that $570,000 for the admin take-if department, that again, just a reminder, is so different from the 131.21 number because the transfer, the master plan capital transfer that was made in fiscal 21 of $850,000. So factoring that out, we're pretty much right in line with our prior year in the rec admin fund. With that, I'd be happy to address any questions.
Do we pay 3% for our processing fee?
I'm sorry?
Do we pay 3%?
I believe it's slightly below that. It does range based on the type of card that's being charged, but I believe it is slightly below 3%. I could definitely get the exact figures on the card processing fees. I don't know if Bobby knows those offhand either, but from what I remember, I believe we are maybe below 3 and not too far below 2 though, if at all.
1.9 to just over 2 is my recollection.
Yeah, that's
okay,
what
that's not so bad. I was going to say, like, if we offer an incentive or want to at any point of, a discount if people pay with check or cash.
Yeah, we've definitely looked, and especially with Rec Track, the upgrade in ACH versus credit card. But it's actually quite a complex switch over. But we're definitely looking at that to see if there's ways of even a 1.5% savings on $2.5 million of monthly billing. It starts to add up.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because a couple of private camps that the kids are going to, they give a discount when you do that. They don't charge. They charge us the 3%, or they don't.
Yeah.
Or we pay with our checking account.
Yeah. So you're really what you're saying, Stephanie, is charge for the credit card and then discount if they don't use a credit card.
Yeah,
I mean, I hate it. I hate when they charge me, so I always avoid it and use my checking. I don't know if we want to piss people off because it always makes me mad. But I was just saying either we offer a discount or offer an alternative. Because I know when I've paid, if I don't drop something off, there's not an alternative online for us here. And so that makes it harder.
yeah, I think the only issue, Stephanie, I agree with you because I've just got invoiced for my kids' sleepaway camp, which is an ungodly amount of money. But and they do charge 3% sort of fee on it. I think there's pros and cons to it. One is it does frustrate customers, and two is that unless you've got an online system where people are going to stick in their routing number and their account number, that means manual check cashing, and that could be a dog of an experience for the staff. But it's certainly worthy of thinking about because there's 2% on what do you bring in $3-4 million is not chump change.
Yeah, like I said, the opportunity is in the monthly billing. So fitness, Children's Circle, ELC, Kids Club, and we could do it in camp. So there's somewhere around $2.5 million worth of opportunity. But again, there needs to be some work, some investigation into it.
Yeah, a streamlined system that doesn't burden our staff with that.
Yep. So I know you're on it. Good. Any other questions for John? All right, we will move on to the Executive Director report. Lisa Shepherd will review items in her report.
Okay, the first thing I'm bringing up is COVID news again. I'm sure you're all aware by now the temporary restraining order on certain school districts in the state of Illinois, including our school district was one of them, one of the plaintiffs in that. The Park District is not in that suit, has nothing to do with that suit. So we are separate from that. There's been some question, just one parent in my case asking us to rescind the mask order for Children's Circle and ELC students that calls in the order that they're part of that order. They are not. DCFS is still mandating masks to licensed daycare facilities. So we will continue to require indoor mask wearing in our daycare until time that mandate is lifted and the licensing doesn't hinge on that. We can't just say no mask. We would not be a licensed center. We do when the weather's nice, try to get the kids outside, and in that case, they do not have to wear masks if the rates are low, which they were last year. So we're sticking with that. So then we talk about the rest of our programs and facilities. I'm sure you also saw the governor came out and said there's possibility that he may be lifting the mask order around the 28th, I believe. Hasn't been firmly in there, but that's what we're projecting. So our feeling as staff is that we continue to follow the mask orders. We always have followed CDC. We always followed health department and the governor's orders, and is our recommendation that we continue to follow that and then look and see what happens on the 28th at that time. So that's how we are proceeding. Is there any questions about that?
I remember seeing in his order, the governor's order, like he specifically named daycare centers that were not included.
And definitely the 28th, daycare is not included in that order at all. Yeah. And I don't anticipate that will be taken away, that mass order, until they have vaccines for the younger kids. So yeah. There will be no changes on the 28th for that. We'll watch the other programs and facilities. Yeah. We did reopen Watts, the building of Watts, if you recall, around Christmas time, right after when the rates were really high. We were having an incredibly hard time managing the participants to wear their masks inside, which direct result of our staff getting ill to the point where we were afraid we wouldn't have enough staff to keep open. At that time, we closed the building, got all of our staff healthy, and then we really watched the numbers because that was a choice that we made to protect our staff. The numbers were going down. We felt their numbers were safe, and we opened the facility back up, still mandating mask wearing and doing our best to get people to follow that mandate. But right now, we have given our staff a whole bunch of KN95 masks, and they're good to go when they're at that facility. So we'll continue to watch that, and hopefully that goes on. So that's kind of our COVID-19 update at this time.
Lisa,
Yeah,
am I just ignorant? Did I hear that Cook County might lift its vaccine mandate? I didn't see any sort of date, but
Yeah,
if I remember that that applies to the fitness center.
yep, it does. They're talking about, we have not seen anything firm, so keeping our fingers crossed that that is also going at the same time as the lifting of the mask mandate. They would do the vaccine mandate at the same time. So that would affect our fitness center, our group fitness, adult classes, things like that.
We have state mandates and Cook County, the only ones that we have to worry about.
Correct.
The mandates or anything.
No, that's it. Those two are what we watch, Cook County and statewide.
Right.
So I'll keep you posted as that evolves. It will be Friday night at 5 p.m. when they make an announcement, and then we'll let you know, and they'll drop it for the next Monday. So next thing I want to say is I'm so proud of our team. We did the rec track migration. Truly a team effort. Bobby, Lauren, Jill, actually the rec team, the business services team, all worked together on this project. It was probably a year long, right? Maybe a little over a year. To do that one day to that migration. It's an ongoing process. The team will keep on meeting, as Bobby can probably allude to in a second, that we're not done. We're still working out the kinks. We're still working on modules and things like that. At the same time, Erin rolled out the website redesign, and I hope you've all had a chance by now to go on there. Would love it. And again, everybody worked on that. And Erin was the team leader on that. So Bobby or Erin, do you have anything to add? Or I see Jill's on here. Jill did a great job. Jill, if you have anything to add, please chirp in too. So Bobby.
Yeah, Lisa, so 2.0 for RecTrack, we're going to be looking at a bunch of operational improvements and add-ons to the software, from signed contracts through to text messages, through to the way we sell daily passes for special events. So those are a bunch of little projects that we'll be working on that I know much of our teams have set aside for 2022, and that will probably continue for the rest of the year. So watch for those continued improvements. We're really excited. Operational improvements is kind of our focus this next year, and we've already seen big improvements with this new version of RecTrack.
Erin, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so some of this has been a little bit of a soft launch as we've been rolling things out, getting things working. We've had a couple of kinks. The website was down a little bit last week. So we're really going to be starting to push it once our new brochure comes out, which is in the next couple of weeks. So look for more coming on that, but we're excited. It's been quite the project to do both at the same time.
Oh,
But kudos to everybody. Jill, I don't know if you want to say anything. I don't know if you probably putting her on the spot, but Jill and Lauren and Amy have done a wonderful job working through a lot of those bugs. So especially Lauren and behind the scenes doing that. John, do you have anything to add on your team for that?
Just that, they've done, the registration team really did a tremendous job. Lauren, Jill, Amy, can't speak enough to the great job they did implementing that.
All right, we, as Bobby kind of alluded to, we're working on our annual staff performance and goals for the year. So efficiency, as he discussed, is a big one for us this year. And as we look at how we can do things smarter, not work harder. So we will be developing our goals, and as they align to strategic plan. So we'll be showing you what we completed, and then also what we're rolling over. We have a lot that will be rolling over because COVID was, again, a hard year that kind of stopped our momentum in our strategic plan, but we will continue to roll those over if we need to. In addition, we'll be doing a staff full-time, part-time, permanent part-time, year-round part-time staff survey that will go out at the end of this month that Becky and Erin and I are working on now. And then we'll report that back in April or May. And then we all do another survey for all of our part-time, seasonal staff in the summer. And we'll be doing that again. So look forward to seeing that. Chris has some great news on the Watts Center ice rink cooling floor. So do you want to
Absolutely.
about that?
As the board might recall, in August, talked about proceeding with some repairs prior to the season. The board authorized Lisa Shepherd to expense up to $65,000 to make those repairs. I'm very happy to report that as of February 15th at 7:16 p.m., those repairs are still good. So we were able to source a specialized product that is like a stop leak that we were able to put into our existing system. So we didn't have to do any excavation, which was great. The product works. The sales pitch of the company was, it's 15 grand, and if it doesn't work, we'll give you your money back 100%. So I thought that was a pretty good sales pitch. So we installed the product right before we opened the rink. We got the system filled up to the appropriate amount of glycol, and we haven't had any issues since. So for the first time in a long time, I feel very confident about the condition of the cooling floors at Watts. So it was a very big success for the team, and great to know that that piece of infrastructure is going to be around for another decade or so without needing a multi-million-dollar replacement. So very successful, and only about 35,000 of the 65 was spent.
I really like that part. So that
Me
was
too.
really-
Yeah, great.
That's
Now
awesome.
we can put the other 30,000 to a steel beams at their steel railing at the beach.
We need about $300,000 more to
Like 10 times more than that to get the railing.
It's a start, Michael.
Start.
It's a
We're thinking.
start.
There you go.
Part of our GoFundMe.
We're continuing working on the Watts renovation. We have a team of White staff and Olson meeting weekly to go over that project. So it's progressing nicely. So we won't miss a beat as Chris leaves us. And he even said he'd come back and look at another, look at the spec sheets again before we actually start building. So we appreciate that help from Chris as we move forward. So now's the time in my report that I sadly say that Chris has resigned his position and to grow at Northbrook. I always get a little teary-eyed whenever I lose a great member. So hopefully I'll get through it. So Chris came to us when I was here for 2 years. I think it was Aaron and I on the interview team. That's the only one here right now. And we're so impressed with this young man, and we were riding around the parks. I'm like, so you think there's some things that we could do here? And he goes, oh yes. And he had a list of pages of things that he could do for our park system in his time here. And he's exceeded all of our expectations. I think one of the best teams in the state of Illinois. So we're extremely sad to lose him because he was an integral part of it. And I know this is different probably in this industry, any place else, you take immense pride when you have a staff member that is going to grow and using the skills he learned here to go into a district that has more acreage and different facilities that he can continue to learn and grow and build his resume to meet his career goals. So we thank you very much, Chris, for all you've done for the Park District. You'll get a bench with your name on it. So you have to tell me where you would like that to go. And maybe we'll even put a little picture of your favorite IAPD person on it. I think maybe chip in for a
Just make the bench for Peter Murphy. My
Before-
name is on every part.
we tease Chris about that all the time with Peter Murphy. It's his best friend. They're like this. But we appreciate all you've done. And I don't know if any of the other team members or the board want to say anything to Chris. But I will be sad to leave him go. As I mentioned earlier to the board, this week, Chris was transitioning from my A team into my network peer, and he served on interview. I do interviews in a different way. I have and I have Parks team that I bring Parks people in from other district to serve on a panel. And so Chris went over to that side, to my Parks team panel, and interviewed his own replacement, which is very unusual, but I really appreciate his insight as we move forward. So, and I know he's just down the street, and will still always be a treasured colleague that will continue to get together. And he's already making me buy him drinks at the IAPD legislative conference, which I'm happy to do. So, Bobby, do you have anything to say?
Yes, Chris, bittersweet. Wish you all the best. I have some very, very fond memories, most of which I can't say on the call. very much a mentor for me when I came into the field. Had no Parks and Rec experience, and really got on the train with you at the beach and never got off. And some fond memories of winning the park grant, the Oslo grants, the gold medals. It's been an epic 7 years, and I've no doubt you're going to be very successful in your new role. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I will say something to you, Chris, and I'm curious if my Chris problem will leave when you leave. Do you know what my Chris problem is?
Is it the face you make when I tell you how much something's going to cost in a public meeting?
Close. It's me routinely and without explanation forgetting you when I go down the list of reports. Just jumping right over you like as if you don't exist. And I do apologize again. And in typical Chris fashion, you were always responded to that with a smile, did not take it personally, which is very, very important in your business. Parks business is not taking things personally and just moving forward. So you are doing that now moving forward. And I know that it was a big and difficult decision for you and involved your family and involves your children. It involves everybody. I know it was a big deal, but we do understand, and we're going to miss you terribly. And you were just a lot of fun to have on the team. And we all know how competent you were, you are, and you will be. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Well said, Lisa. I agree with all of that. And I know I'll see you because I'm in Northbrook a lot and at their facilities. So I wish you luck. And I know we'll see you around for.
Thank you.
Erin, I think Erin has something to say.
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to say, sitting in those interviews, we were not pleased with the candidates we saw when we were looking for Chris, and he walked in the door and it was such a sigh of relief. So he's created such big shoes to fill in our district, but I know all the parks, grants, everything he's created for us has created such a legacy that we will continue that greatness. And if not, we'll just call him and make him help us. No, okay. Like Bobby said, I've had so many great memories with him that I don't want to talk about in a public meeting, but I hope he'll buy us a drink soon that we can talk about it more.
Chris, I got two things to say. One, you are a gentleman and a scholar. It's been just an honor having you here on the team. I think, we often wait until people leave to tell them how impressive they are, but I think you've known how impressed we are with you, and quite frankly, all the of Lisa's direct reports I think are outstanding. That's one thing. And the second thing is, can you get me a wristband for Northbrook Days? I need 4 of them, 2 adults and 2 kids, please.
Let's see what I can do.
Hey, Chris, I just wanted to say a few complimentary things, but I've certainly enjoyed interacting with you. But I've been really, and it's such a good omen for how things will go in Northbrook. I've always been amazed as you discuss a project or answer questions about it, you know every detail of it, and your answers are always well thought out, but instantaneous. However, you very quickly can shift to look at it from the team view of how does this affect other departments, or how does the rest of the organization think about it? And I was just particularly impressed with your ability to be independent and confident and detailed, but also always look at the overall entity. So I wish you the best of luck. I'm glad you're going to be nearby, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And I've only been on the board a short time, but thank you. You've been so helpful, so knowledgeable. And I guess I have a question. Will I still be seeing your adorable daughter in the?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. So we'll stay connected.
We're sticking with Children's Circle for sure for the time being.
Yes. All right.
I'm
Great.
excited because my revenue goes up, non-resident. Great.
Sorry, Chris.
I just give it to that. So Chris, I promised Chris that he could say something, and my joke with him is I always tease him being too long-winded, and, you know, can't get to the point. And I promised he could talk as long as he wants tonight, and I won't roll my eyes and I won't go like this behind the scenes. So you're on, Chris, if you want to say anything.
Well, I don't know if Lisa or Stephanie, you guys remember Andre's speech when he left?
Yes, yes.
Oh, yes,
Uh,
yes.
The manifesto.
Anybody
yeah.
has to go to the bathroom or make some popcorn or anything like that, like you're in for it here, you know, like I've got, I mean, you know, about this much I want to talk about. No, I really, I want to thank everybody, you know, on the administrative team, in particular, Lisa and Bobby, John, Jenny, Aaron, Adam, Matt, I mean, Jill, everyone on the team here on the call tonight. I mean, it's, you know, Lisa indicated it by no means was an easy choice for me. You know, this district has been such an integral part of my life, and, you know, bringing my family here and, you know, my son and all the amazing experiences he had here, and my daughter, and this really was our safe place during COVID. And, you know, it's one of those things that I never thought I would say, but looking back on it, you know, I was looking around this office, as terrible as it is sometimes, and I was thinking, wow, we really fought COVID in here for a long time. And, you know, I wanted to thank everybody that I've worked with, Lisa, Bobby. I mean, the trust that Lisa's put in me and what I was able to do with that trust. And the board in particular, Lisa Brooks, Bart, Michael, Stephanie, Carol, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for getting yelled at in the grocery store because you approved something I recommended. You know, really, oftentimes at the professional level, we tell the board something and we appreciate them respecting us and them, you know, agreeing with us, but we're not there when you're in the park and you're getting beat up because of something we recommended you should do, or we're not there in the grocery store. So thank you for trusting me, and thank you for putting your trust in me. And Lisa Brooks, thank you. You've been there since the beginning. We both came onto the district at the same time. And Lisa, you actually have played a huge role in my life that you don't know about. So I'm going to share this in a public meeting, and it's probably going to be on
I think
record.
I might know what you're talking
Right.
about.
So I don't know if you guys recall when I had a mustache. Well, my
No, I
wife
didn't
didn't
think
much
this was
care
that.
for that mustache. And for a long time I had it. And Lisa Brooks in a public meeting told me I look like Ron Jeremy. So I proceeded to go home. I think she met Ron Swanson from the Parks and Rec. And I proceeded to go home and shave that mustache right off. So
You're welcome.
my wife was very pleased with that feedback that you provided for me. So that's one of my all-time favorite Glencoe board moments. I mean, you know, there's been some meetings that have just been off the wall. I mean, we're like, you're walking out and you're like, this really happened. Like, this actually happened in a public space. Like, this person said that, or this person acted that way. And I cannot tell you enough. I mean, $17 million worth of capital projects in 7 years is unbelievable for any district, let alone a district that had spent like $2 million in the previous 10 years. And the trust that you guys put in the staff and the things that you did. I mean, we spent money on things that they're not sexy. Building automated systems, parking lots, pickup trucks, tractors, you know, computers for staff. I mean, having the teams back in a way that really made us a gold medal district. So I wanted to thank each one of you guys personally, on the administrative team, the board. I mean, this was not an easy choice for me. This was about, you know, putting the runway in front of me that I felt I needed to really be, you know, an aggressive chief executive candidate down the line. So, you know, Northbrook is a larger district with much greater sized parks department. So I had an unbelievable experience here. And this is absolutely a job that somebody, you know, could sit down in with the team that we have here and really make a 20 or 30 year career out of this. And for me, it was really about having really, really lofty goals. And it was a very, very hard decision. So, you know, thank you for all the trust, and particularly Lisa Shepard. I mean, you know, it's 7 years, we have been through a lot. And, you know, meetings where, you know, we walked away and we're like, are we getting $1 million? I don't know. I mean, a lot of water has come under the bridge in the last 7 years. So thank you for everything. Thank you guys, everybody. You know, this has been a huge part of my life and my kids and my family. And, you know, Glencoe will always be part of my life. So thank you.
Well, Chris, I have to say thank you for coming back to our first public meeting, and at least Brooks was there, Aaron was there, and we're talking about the Berlin baseball field, and his very first one. And Chris had to be on one side of me, and Craig also, you said you work here, was on the other side because people kept on grabbing me
Yeah.
because they wanted to
was
keep on grabbing
really-
my arms and stuff. So they had like actually be bodyguards to get me out of the room. And I looked at Chris, I'm like, please come back tomorrow. Because that was his very first meeting, and he came back tomorrow.
That was
So,
my third day.
or third day, it was his third day. I'm like, oh God, it's not always like this. It was for that whole project, but he's still coming back day after day. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, I thought you were going to thank me for removing you from the sustainability.
You know, I that is another thing. I'll tell you that this is a recorded meeting, so that falls under the category of something we can talk about the next time I bump into you. But
And I understand you're going to have a party tomorrow. Is that right?
depending
Oh,
on the
Thursday.
weather.
Well,
Thursday.
no,
Thursday.
if it's a snowstorm, maybe not.
It
Yeah,
depends
I
because
mean,
there's a blizzard.
It may look
Yeah.
like the team is going to have to be here at 4 to do snow, and if they're here
Oh.
at 4, they're not going to be on 2 feet by 5 o'clock. So
Oh,
we're going to do some kind of lunch, and again, like Lisa said, it's not far down the road. I expect to see a lot of my colleagues again, and stay in touch.
great.
Well, I told him if we can't get in because if this blizzard happens, then I know Molly Hammer at Northbrook, and I'll make sure she lets them out at 3 o'clock one day so we can have a bonfire. I'm not worried about that. So
The weird thing is going to be not working here on Monday and coming to drop my daughter off at Children's Circle in the morning.
That's-
That's
that
that
is
would be
it's
really
for
weird
sure
thing.
going to be
Really
weird,
weird.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm really going to find out who likes me and who doesn't down there for sure.
Yeah, then you will. They no longer, they don't have to press you anymore. So, well, thank you. I can't thank you enough. And what I really like about Chris is when I go, kind of like what I did with Carol, would you mind coming back and helping train the new person? And he didn't miss a beat. He's like, of course I will, so that's very helpful because there's some knowledge in that head that isn't written down anywhere that will be very helpful to whoever fills his position. So
Yeah, I've seen Carol in John's office and I've yelled at her. I'm like, you don't know how to retire. What are you doing?
yeah, no, she keeps on coming back. It's awesome. So that's just the testament of our team and what we've built here and the loyalty we have. And, people don't do that if they feel they haven't been appreciated through their career. So
My friends have joked with me that in the last 4 weeks, I've put more time into the job, and then in the whole last 4 weeks have been crazy. Everybody's like, when you quit a job, you're just kind of supposed to go in late and leave early. And what are they going to do? Fire you? And it's like, I've been taking my laptop home and working over the weekends. And I mean, the office is cleaner than it's ever been in 7 years. I like
it's very nice.
it's unbelievable. I mean, I hope they enjoy all the work I put into it. I mean, I even scrubbed the fridge. So
Yeah, he's got the- well, I appreciate all the files. I was there and he showed me the files. I'm like, this is great. So because you try to, I said a meeting, get all of Chris's knowledge, but you lose it. But all the details are in the files. So I appreciate that. So
thank you.
we are looking at a snowstorm coming in, and I have to say, the parks team has been phenomenal in snow removal. When we do have those storms, they're here really early and they leave really late. And all the pizza in the world that you buy from is not enough thanks when they have to put those kind of days in. So we're watching a storm very closely right now. And we just want to make you aware that looks like tomorrow it's supposed to rain, and then the next day it's supposed to be a blizzard. So watts will be very questionable. If that does happen, it's hard to have melted ice and then snow and then get the ice built back up. So just be patient with us if any of you skaters out there, if that should happen. It's not, maybe it'll totally miss us. It's a 50-50 chance. Who knows? They have all these technologies, but they're not quite sure if it'll hit a shed. Other than that, I have just that I was sworn in as the IPRA board chair-elect at the conference. With this role, I'm also serve as finance committee chair and the foundation liaison. And then at the same time, it was my turn to be the NSSRA chairman of the board. So I took that role on last month also and was sworn into that, and that's a 2-year position. So those are other professional things I'm doing to represent the Park District. Any other questions? All right.
Okay, Lisa, thank you so much. We'll move on to action items. I entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 936, an ordinance making certain findings of fact and authorizing the sale of certain property commonly known as 310 South Avenue, PIN number 0507402018 Glencoe, Illinois, under the Park Commissioners Land Sale Act 70 ILCS 1235/1 as presented.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, any discussion? Very good. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Boren,
yes.
Mr. Kobe,
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Spain,
Yes.
President Brooks.
Yes, motion passes.
Alright.
I entertain a motion to approve to award, a motion to approve. I entertain a motion to approve to award the contract for replacing one 50-ton air-cooled condenser for $201,461 to Midwest Mechanical of Lombard, Illinois, as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Mr. Covey,
Yes, sorry, I was on mute.
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes.
Commissioner Spain,
Yes.
President Brooks.
Yes, motion passes. Lisa, is there any other business?
No, I have no other business.
Oh, very good. I don't believe we were going into executive session. Is that your understanding, Lisa?
Yeah, staff does not need to go into executive session.
Okay, and we did not.
Can I just ask one quick question?
You
Yes,
can, please.
In the activities report, it said with the daddy-daughter dance, you were postponing to late summer. I happened to have someone text me about it. And so I said I would ask if there was a date, and I saw it in there. So I was just wondering when you thought, so what does late summer mean? Like August or?
Probably August. Yeah. It's gonna be more of a beach party than indoors. It's just, right now, we just don't see it viable with COVID. So we'll
It will
probably,
be included in our spring summer brochure that's coming out in 2 weeks.
Okay, I'll let her know. Thank you.
good. Anything else?
No one wants to dance with a mask on.
Yeah, well,
Most people do for that, but they were asking about it.
Yeah, I
Other
appreciate it.
people were asking about it.
It's good tradition, and we're sorry we couldn't have it this month. I know some Lake County districts still had it, so they probably saw it out there, but
Yeah,
they have
That's
less
what
mask restrictions than we do, so.
yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
yeah.
Do we need to,
Okay.
do we need to approve the minutes?
We did
approve
that
the
in.
minutes?
We did that at the
consent
very
agenda.
beginning.
Oh, okay, right, that's right.
Anything else?
Nope, just, nope, this, I would table the executive director agreement. We need to have that published and posted for 6 days, so we'll do that next
Okay.
month.
Okay, very good. And if there is nothing else, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Commissioner Kobe,
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes.
Commissioner Spain,
Yes.
President Brooks,
Yes. Motion passes.
7:39.
Meeting adjourned. Oh,
Ooh.
goodbye, Captain Chris.
Signing off.
Bye, guys. Great.
Yeah,
work,
take care, Chris.
everybody.
Good luck,
Good
Chris.
luck to you, Chris.
Good luck.
Soon.
Thank you, everyone.
What was that?